Hello, I'm Jan, and I'm just going to try and share some thoughts today, if I can, about how I'm coping, how I'm handling the situation that we find ourselves in. It's really taken us all by surprise, hasn't it, and totally changed our lives, and that's really hard. And I'm quite an anxious person. I naturally get quite fearful about stuff. And Brian always says, that's my husband, Brian says, if I haven't got anything to worry about, I'll worry that I haven't got anything to worry about. That's a bit of a complicated sort of statement, but it's true. And at this time, that there is a threat, there is a danger, there is potential harm out there. I began by feeling quite anxious and quite fearful and quite sad, really, and quite emotional. You know, what happens if I can't see my family for weeks on end? How will I cope with that? How will I deal with that? What happens when we can't go to church? What happens if? What happens when? What happens? But I began to realise that all of those fears for my family, for the future, for safety, all of those fears and all of those anxieties weren't actually helping me. They were going to tie me up. They were going to rob me of any joy or any place to find God or to find peace at this time. And so I started to remind myself of some of the Bible verses that I've known for a long, long time. Things like Isaiah 41:10. Do not fear, God says, for I am with you. God is with us. He is with me. In Matthew 6:34, don't worry about anything. You don't need to worry, Janet. You don't have to worry. Don't worry. And in Philippians 4:6, it's a similar verse. Don't be anxious about anything. And so I began to think, how am I going to deal with those anxious thoughts? How am I going to deal with those fearful thoughts? And the only way that I found I can deal with that is moment by moment, reminding myself and remembering that God is in control. This did not take him by surprise. He knows exactly what's happening. He knows the end from the beginning, and he holds us in the palm of his hand. In Ecclesiastes, which is in the Old Testament, chapter 3, verse 1, it says that there's a time for everything. And maybe this is a time for us to take stock. Maybe it's a time for us to pause in life, maybe not to be so consumed with some of the day-to-day things that we are consumed with, but just to remember that God's in control and to let God work out his plans and his purposes in our lives. Of course I miss my family, of course I miss my friends, I miss being able to go to church in a literal sense as opposed to having to do it virtually online. I miss being able to have your friends in our home to see us and eat with us and holiday with us. But God knows, he knew that this was going to happen. And I'll just encourage you, if you're feeling fearful, if you're feeling anxious, just try to remind yourself that God is in control. He knows the end from the beginning. He will work this out. And obviously for some who are very ill, for some who've lost people in their family, it's a real horrible time, and our hearts go out to these people. But God is in control. And I'm just trying to remember that, trying to remind myself that God is in control, that he knows me and he will hold me and he will look after me, and what he will do for me, he will do for you, because he loves me and he loves you so much. So try and take heart, try and be encouraged, try not to be fearful or anxious, but together, let's encourage each other, let's help one another, let's try to keep each other's spirits up, but remembering that God is in control. Thanks for listening. Bye.